In this training session, we are going to take a look at secondary migration in relation to the private sponsorship of refugees. So secondary migration, this happens when sponsored newcomers decide to move away from their intended community of settlement to a new city or province. And this generally happens at some point after arriving in the community of settlement, but before the end of the sponsorship year. Self-destination, this is when sponsored newcomers arrive at the port of entry, but does not carry on to their intended community of settlement. Instead, they change their final destination before ever reaching the prearranged community of settlement. So reasons for secondary migration. There are many reasons why a newcomer may choose to relocate within Canada, some of which include being closer to family and friends, or being closer to the ethnic or religious communities that the sponsored refugee identifies with. Perhaps having better job prospects, or being closer to support services that may not exist in their current community of settlement, such as medical services. Sometimes it's about finding a place where the cost of living is lower. And in some cases, it's even because of conflict or misunderstandings with their sponsors. Freedom of movement. The Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms states that every citizen of Canada and every person who has the status of a permanent resident of Canada has the right to move and take up residence and to pursue the gaining of a livelihood in any province. So how can we minimize the likelihood of secondary migration? Communicate, communicate, communicate. Communication before arrival, introduce the sponsors and explain what the newcomers can expect. Ask if they have any family or friends in Canada. Ask if they have any concerns or ambitions they may have.
Manage expectations.
Talk about your role as sponsors. Explain why you are welcoming them to live in your community and how you can assist them. And explain why it's important to remain in the intended community for at least 1 year. After arrival, you'll want to explain the rights and reasons why it's best to remain in the intended community of settlement and how you as sponsors can provide support. Initially, it may need to be a daily conversation to build a sense of trust, safety, and support. Then weekly, depending on the independence level of the newcomers. And as a minimum, it should be monthly check-ins. Ask about supports or friends they may have. How is school going? Job prospects? Any troubles of the heart? And so troubles of the heart is actually a culturally sensitive way to ask about mental health. So ask if they have any new worries since arriving, or has anything changed that causes them concern. And when considering relocating, it's good to understand reasons for secondary migration. Can changes be made in the original community of settlement to address the concerns? Perhaps arrange a short visit to the new community of settlement before a permanent move occurs. And discuss what opportunities and challenges they might find in the new community of settlement. For example, higher cost of living, lack of community or sponsor support, and relocating to a bigger city might mean longer commutes.
Discuss with the newcomers who they think could be a potential sponsor or representative in the new community.
Support responsibilities, so options for sponsorship agreement holders. So IRCC's guide to the PSR program explains that there are 3 options available to SAWS for meeting the residency requirements when secondary migration or self-destination occurs. So I'm going to briefly identify these options and I'm going to be showing a more detailed table showing the steps to take later on as well. So the first option is to identify a replacement constituent group and or co-sponsors to meet the residency requirements in the new community. And so this means you're going to locate a group within your own SAWS network to replace the CG or co-sponsors so that the sponsorship undertaking will still remain with your SAW. And so in this case, you'll resubmit an updated sponsorship undertaking and have those replacement persons each complete a sponsor's assessment form.
Or you can transfer the sponsorship from your SAW to another SAW.
And the new SAW will replace that group and they will submit a new IMM 5373 undertaking form, which replaces the first one. And the original sponsorship would be declared in sponsorship breakdown. Or the third option is to appoint representatives in the new community by submitting an appointment of representative in expected community of settlement form. That's a mouthful. It's not the same as when you are wanting someone to act on your behalf with IRCC. This form specifically is just for representatives in the new community of settlement. It has no legally binding contract for them. The legally binding contract still remains with you as the SAW. However, you have two trusted individuals in that new community of settlement, or they are trusted individuals to those refugees who have arrived, those newcomers. And so you're appointing those representatives to assist the newcomer in that new community of settlement. Now we'll take a look at the support responsibilities, the options available for community sponsor groups. So there are three options available to community sponsor groups for meeting the residency requirements. The first option is to locate two co-sponsors in the new community. If the sponsored refugees have family members or friends in the new community, see if they will agree to be co-sponsors. This way, the sponsorship undertaking will still remain with your organization, but the co-sponsors will take on some of the settlement assistance responsibilities in the new community, which the community sponsor group cannot. In this case, you will resubmit an updated sponsorship undertaking and settlement plan, the IMM 5670 form, which includes the co-sponsor signatures. And those co-sponsors will also each submit a sponsor's assessment form. Or if you cannot get anyone to agree to co-sponsor, you can transfer the sponsorship to a new sponsoring group. And that new sponsoring group would need to be located in the new community. In this case, the new group signs and submits a new sponsorship undertaking and settlement plan for the remainder of the sponsorship period. The new undertaking replaces the first, and the original sponsorship would be released from their obligations once the sponsorship breakdown is declared by IRCC. The final option is to appoint representatives in the new community by submitting an appointment of representatives in expected community of settlement form, IMM 5956. And the support responsibility options for groups of 5. There are just two options available to groups of 5 for meeting the residency requirements. The first option is to appoint representatives in the new community. One person for each group member who is not located in the new community of settlement. If the sponsored refugees have family members or friends in the new community, see if they will agree to be appointed representatives. Appointed representatives do not have any legal obligation. They are simply volunteering to assist the sponsored refugees in their new community. The group of 5 continues their legal obligation to ensure the settlement activities are taking place and that they continue to provide settlement funds based on the RAP rates in the new community of settlement. In this case, you will be submitting an appointment of representatives in expected community of settlement form, IMM 5956, for each named representative. The other option is to transfer the sponsorship to a new sponsoring group. The new group will sign and submit a new sponsorship undertaking and settlement plan for the remainder of the sponsorship period. The new undertaking replaces the first, and the original group of 5 would be declared in sponsorship breakdown. So support responsibilities and meeting the residency requirements. IRCC expects that sponsors will make reasonable efforts to fulfill the residency requirements in situations of self-destination and secondary migration. But you're probably thinking, what if we tried and are unable to locate new sponsors or appoint 2 representatives? Well, what now? If sponsors aren't able to fulfill the residency requirements, they should contact IRCC's Resettlement Services Assurance Team, also known as RSAT, and detail the efforts they've made to fulfill the residency requirements. RSAT may then declare a no-fault sponsorship breakdown, and the sponsors may not be required to continue to provide financial and settlement support to the refugees. However, sponsors must continue to support the refugees in the new community of settlement until an official breakdown has been declared by the Resettlement Services Assurance Team. When it comes to secondary migration of blended visa office referred newcomers and meeting the residency requirements. So if you're wondering about BVUR sponsorships, isn't it different? Do I still have to do all of this when there is a RAP officer involved? Yes, BVUR sponsorships are the same for meeting the residency requirements. So IRCC still expects that the sponsors will make reasonable efforts to fulfill the residency requirements in situations of self-destination and secondary migration. RSAT will be working with both the sponsors and the IRCC RAP office, the Resettlement Assurance Program office, in the new community to ensure the newcomers' needs are met. And if BVUR sponsors are not able to fulfill the residency requirements, they should also contact IRCC's Resettlement Services Assurance Team, RSAT, and detail the efforts they've made to fulfill the residency requirements. If sponsorship continues, RSAT will connect sponsors and the representatives in the new community with a local RAP office. If sponsorship cannot continue, then the Resettlement Service Assurance Team will provide the original blended visa office referred sponsors with the transfer to the RAP form, and a sponsorship breakdown will be declared. And IRCC will provide information to the newcomers in regard to the support that they will be eligible for in that new community. Support responsibilities, financial support, and sponsorship breakdowns. If the sponsorship agreement holder has managed to find a replacement constituent group or co-sponsor, or have appointed representatives in the new community, they must recalculate and provide the monthly financial support RAP rates based on the new community of settlement. And be aware that the RAP rates may be higher in some locations. So for example, RAP rates in Toronto, Ontario are much higher than those for St. John, New Brunswick. So this means that sponsors will want to ensure they have enough money set aside for unexpected circumstances such as this, just in case. But what if we expect that a no-fault breakdown will eventually be declared? Well, even when sponsors cannot locate replacements or appoint representatives, it is still their responsibility to provide financial support at the new location's RAP rates and to connect the newcomer with settlement services in that new location until IRCC officially declares a breakdown. And this is true for blended visa office referred secondary migrations as well. So I spoke about this table earlier on, And so at the very top of this table is the reference for the IRPR 153, paragraph 1A. And this table lists the options you can choose from to meet the residency requirements, which are numbered from 1 to 4 on the left-hand column. So the first option is to transfer the case to another SAW in the community of settlement. And these are the steps to follow in this column on the right. I won't read those out now, but you can take a look at them later at your own convenience. And you can locate a CG in the community of settlement. And here are the steps to follow for that option. You can locate co-sponsors in the community of settlement. And again, the options to follow. And finally, you can appoint 2 representatives in the community of settlement. And these are the steps to follow for that option. Here's the table for community sponsors. And this is the table for groups of 5. So what to do? We have a secondary migration checklist for you. And so here are some of the steps you may need to take when secondary migration is imminent or it has already occurred. The first is to document your process. Always make note of your progress. Document everything you have done. You can also save email correspondence and keep a phone log of conversations you've had and a list of the persons you have contacted. Contact RSAT to notify them of the secondary migration details, such as the G number, the principal applicant's first name, last name, and date of birth, their new residence location, and the date they arrived at the new location. And refamiliarize yourself with your options for meeting the residency requirements. Of course, you'll need to recalculate and provide financial support according to the RAP rates in the new community of settlement. Continue to keep RSAT informed of your progress while trying to locate replacement sponsors or representatives in the new community. Notify them of financial support you're now providing since they arrived in the new location and revised settlement plans.
And you'll continue providing support until replacement is approved or a sponsorship breakdown is declared.
Ensure that you have equipped the newcomers
to connect with a settlement agency in the new settlement community.
And since each case of secondary migration or self-destining can be different, this checklist covers all the steps involved. However, you may find that for a particular case, some of these steps may not be necessary. Okay, so these are some helpful resources when you want to refer back to what to do with secondary migration. So we have the residency requirements chart, the online financial support calculator. So this is for calculating the minimum financial support that you require for sponsorships. You might be familiar with it already. There's also a document for key IRCC contacts, so people you would want to connect with by email at IRCC. And of course, for connecting newcomers with settlement providing organizations in their new community. So we do have the settlement support connections for newcomers. And of course, if you do have any questions that come up later on, you are welcome to contact your local RSTP trainer. You can go to the website rstp.ca/en for English /contact-us. And there will be a list of RSTP trainers there for your specific province or area.